Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about something that I've been dealing with for going on about 7 years now, which is having psychosis. I'm going to start by explaining kind of what psychosis is really quick, and then I'm going to talk about my personal experience with it. This video also is going to have a content warning for abandonment, unreality, delusions, general mental health talk, suicidality, gun violence. There are 3 parts of psychosis: delusions, hallucinations, and disorganized speech/thought. Disordered speech/thought is a bit harder to describe, so I'm just going to link below the Wikipedia article that kind of has a list of the different types and explains what each of the different types are. Delusions and hallucinations, my favorite way of explaining it is they're 2 sides of the same coin where your brain reacts to stimuli incorrectly, but hallucinations are more the sensation, the taking in of the stimuli, whereas delusions is the perception, which is the interpretation of the stimuli. Before I get into talking about how I experience delusions and, to a much lesser extent, hallucinations, which are the 2 more well-known parts of psychosis, I will mention that I do have really bad disorganized speech and thought. I personally study with alogia, which is poverty of speech either in amount or content, blocking, which is an abrupt stop in the middle of a train of thought, circumstantial speech, which is the inability to answer a question without going into unnecessary detail or tangents, echolalia, which is the echoing of another person's speech. It's also super common in autistic people, and I'm going to attach in the description a link to a video by Ask an Autistic about it. Derailment and distractible speech, which is thoughts jumping from one topic to another, either spontaneously or in response to an internal stimulus for the former, or in response to an external stimulus for the latter. Evasive interaction, which is where thoughts come out in a very evasive or filtered way, and incoherence, which for me means that the words just don't come out fitting how I intended them to. Overall, I just kind of refer to all of this as my brain not being friends with my mouth. I also only really seem like I can speak because I do social script a lot, meaning I kind of pre-plan how to interact with other people. I repeat myself a lot, and also on here specifically I cut out a heck of a lot of me staring off into space because the words just stopped. And now especially I do have scripts more for what I'm planning on saying in videos. Maybe someday I will just make a video of all of the times that disorganized speech and thought have come up while filming and I had to just cut them out. To get it out of the way, I'm just going to say that I don't really experience hallucinations. This doesn't mean I don't have psychosis though, as of the 3 symptoms, only 1 is required for a diagnosis. Sometimes I will have really mild hallucinations, but I don't think it's any more so than people without psychosis do. Like hallucinating or imagining your phone vibrating in your pocket, or thinking you hear someone say your name when they're not, that kind of stuff. I do, however, always worry that they'll start, so even though they haven't crept up so far, I'm always questioning most things that happens because maybe they only happen to me and I'm just not aware of it. Pardon the lighting change, I just realized that I could move that really yellowy-ish light. So now on to delusions. In middle school, I had 2 best friends, although I was definitely closer to one than to the other, as we had been friends since we were in kindergarten. However, said friend also had other friends, whereas I was a really anxious kid, and I only had 1 other friend in 6th grade, and I ended up growing apart from her the next year. My friend did drama club, but I wasn't talented enough to, so every year I would feel like she was pulling away from me and growing closer to her drama friends. For most kids, things like this are common and are met with jealousy because children are learning how to handle their emotions. For me, however, it was met with me 100% believing that she hated me and was leaving me. And not just that, but also that she was lying to me when she said that I was wrong in thinking that, And I really do not like being lied to. I don't think anyone does, to be honest. And this happened every year through the end of sophomore year, which is when I got more friends who I didn't get paranoid around, at least after a while. But the thing is, I was right. That friendship was the start of my oldest delusion, the one that every single person who likes me or who I trust is completely lying or is friends with me out of pity or a feeling of obligation, and that not a single person actually likes me. In the 3 years since I made new friends, I have made progress, and I now have like 2 people or so that I trust not to hate me, although to be completely honest, there's not a single person that I haven't had a panic attack over my delusion becoming about them. Some people it's just more frequent than others. However, there have also been a lot of times where my delusion was reinforced. That first friend, there was a time where I texted her because I felt left out because she had lots of other friends and I never got invited to hang out. So I texted her and I asked why. After she responded thinking that I was someone else because she didn't have her supposed best friend's phone number saved, she told me it was because nobody wanted to put in the energy to be around me. I went to a mostly white high school, and she had fallen in with this crowd of people who liked to use slurs to be funny, I think. Their favorites were the R slur, the N slur, with a hard R at the end, and jokes such as, "Did you just assume my gender?" and triggered jokes. This all made me super uncomfortable and made me feel really unsafe. So I would ask them to not do that while I was around. And apparently that was just too much work, and the time spent with me wasn't worth it. The most recent time it was confirmed was last semester. I had a good amount of drama with my roommate where I was essentially made to keep a secret from absolutely everybody who went to our school, especially our friends. However, I still thought that maybe that was just a one-off bad thing, because I think those happen in friendships. I don't know, I don't have enough experience. Through the entire friendship, now, we had a friend group that was the 2 of us and 2 other people, one of whom my ex-roommate is now dating. Through that entire friendship, I was very open about not being good at social cues and needing honesty because I couldn't tell what was real and what was my brain messing with me, and I asked to be told if I messed up so that I could fix it. At the end of the semester, I had hoped that we had made it past all the drama and were going to settle into a friendship. However, I had a nagging feeling that my roommate was hiding something from me. They hung out all the time with their partner, which I assumed was just normal partner stuff. They hung out with the other member of our friend group, which made sense, because that's what friends do. But it felt like they were always giving off bad energy towards me, and I couldn't tell if it was my psychosis talking or not. The day I got home for winter break, I checked my social media, and they had unadded and blocked me from all of their private social media. I texted them and they responded, essentially blaming me for everything that had happened. They told me they didn't like being around me socially, which is fair. I'm not going to force anyone to be friends with me. That's kind of one of my major personality traits because of everything else I've mentioned so far. But they felt like they had become obligated to stay friends with me. Apparently, the signals I had been getting had been intended, whereas I had thought them to be manufactured by my brain. To deal with them and work through them, I would post on my Finsta, which is my private Instagram, about it, and they interpreted that as me understanding the signals they were sending out and posting about it in an upset way to guilt trip them into staying friends with me. Whereas I was just trying to parse through everything that is happening and discern what was real and what wasn't. They ended their text by essentially acting like my needing things to be told directly to me hadn't been something I had asked for the entire friendship and had only just come up when I texted them. They moved out and the 3 of them are still friends, and I do have better friends now, but that did mean that I started the semester with that delusion even more in my face than usual. And I had to ask my friends on what was, I think, an every other day basis, whether they were only friends with me out of pity or obligation. I trust them a little bit more now, and they're aware of why I'm like this, but my paranoia is nowhere near completely gone. So that's my first of 3 big hallucinations, and it's definitely my oldest and most prominent, and also the most damaging to interpersonal relationships. The next one, in order of appearance, is the delusion that I have cursed everyone that I care about. This has faded back a bit, but anytime something bad happens to anyone I care about, it does resurface. In spring 2016, I muted this part just because I talked about my parents' personal medical stuff and I didn't really want to put that on the internet, but long story short, they got sick one right after another, and it was very stressful. And me being mugged at gunpoint. So somewhere in there, my brain managed to come to the conclusion that this was all my fault, and I had somehow managed to subconsciously place a curse on anyone near and or dear to me. The last one is definitely the most fucked up. I do know where my brain got the idea for it, which is the Twilight Zone episode, Perchance to Dream, and it came into being fall 2016. A very short synopsis of Perchance to Dream is a man thinks that if he falls asleep, he'll die. He had been dreaming, and his dreams had been coming in chapters, and he dreamt of a mysterious, threatening woman. He goes to seek help for it, but is unable to escape her, and jumps out of a window, killing himself. It is then revealed that he went into the psychiatrist's office, laid down, fell asleep, and moments later let out a scream, then died. The audience is then told that a man can dream of half an hour of life in his head this split second before he dies. The week before we found out my mom was sick and I was held at gunpoint, I had a breakdown. A huge, major, terrifying breakdown, worse than I had ever had before. And essentially it came to a head with me telling my parents I wanted to kill myself. And I really, truly, deeply did. My brain now likes to tell me that I went through with those urges. It tells me that the last year and a half of my life has been a dream in the moments before I completely die. This is terrifying to me because I have no way of proving it wrong, but I'm now finally in a place where, in general, I'm happy with my life. This means that I don't want the concept of potentially being on the absolute brink of death to be true, because it would mean that this life that I love right now isn't real and I never actually achieved it. I really appreciate it if you've made it this far. This is a super, super heavy topic, as well as a deeply personal one, and is something that I only recently became more comfortable talking about. If you comment, I'd really appreciate if you didn't try to disprove my delusions or anything to do with whether or not they're real. Thank you, and thanks for watching.